Hi guys! So I'm not gonna lie, I definitely made, oh you're catching a bit of a reflection, that's okay, I'll move it. I definitely made this entire video in advance and then my iPad died. So I'm gonna do it all over again. So I'm gonna be really practiced by this point in the exercise, which is totally fine. So I did this guy yesterday, and then I was working on one just a minute ago, obviously, before my iPad quit. But that means I have a lot of learnings to share with you guys today too. So I do have my cell phone here. I'm just going to tune in quickly to the Facebook page. Basically, I'm going to look at where we're live right now. And if you want to send me a question or you have something that you're curious about, I should see it pop up here on the page. So feel free to ask me any questions. Here, I'm just going to tap on it. There we go. Now I've got it live on the side, so you can ask me any questions and they'll pop up here. And let's get started. So today I'm working with a cold press watercolor paper. This is a Strathmore pad. I love this size. It's my favorite to work in. There's 12 sheets, about 5.5 by 8.5 inches, 140 pound paper. I can post a picture of this on the Facebook page afterwards. Really nice size, really nice finish to the paper, and it's my favorite. It's just a good size to work with. So I've got my page out here, and I'm just gonna tape it down with some painter's tape. This is my favorite tape. It's just green painter's tape. I get it at Home Depot, and it's like dirt cheap for 4 rolls. If somebody you know and love enjoys painting, you can totally just steal some from them, which is something I used to do a lot of at my old house because my sister always had green painter's tape laying around and it was my favorite to work with. And I usually defuzz it on my dress or my pants just a little bit so that it's not totally sticky. So I did about half the width of the tape at the top. I'm going to do the full width of the tape at the bottom because we're going to add this nice blue band at the end. And then just to make it even, we'll do half on each side, give or take. Doesn't have to be perfect. If it is perfect, great. If it's not, no one's gonna notice. The most important thing is sealing that edge and giving yourself a bit of a frame to work with, so that when you peel it off, it's always such a nice reveal. It's always heartbreaking though when you rip your page, so do make sure you defuzz it, or not defuzz it, fuzzify it, I guess, on your pants or on your cloth or something. Today I have my larger watercolor palette because I'm working with some pinks and reds and I wanted some extra room for mixing, but these are mostly the colors I'm going to be using. I have 3 warmer greens mixed at the bottom, 3 kind of cooler bluey green teal color, you know, hues mixed at the top, and that's for the different variations in the 2 cactuses. So for this one, I didn't trace out anything. You could use a pencil if you wanted to and give yourself a bit of a line. So here, you know, I've got this foreground. I could give myself a line there for how much foliage I'm going to have versus how much of the cactuses, etc. So I had a little bit of an aloe plant here, a desert rose cactus, like a bulbous cactus, I guess, and then like a tall traditional cactus. So you could lay those out with pencil if you wanted to give yourself a place to go. I'm not going to. I'm going to kind of free trace with my brush a little bit, but if you wanted to lay them out for yourself so you don't mess up the area, you can. Some of these I laid down after I did my foreground, and some of them I laid down before. So the aloe, the rose, and the bigger cactus I laid down to begin with, and these 2 are kind of sitting behind everything. So we're going to start with a little bit of the foreground, leaving ourselves just a bit of room on this right side. So I'm going to use this kind of lime greeny color, and I've mixed a little bit more of it in the middle too. It's a little bit muddier actually, and I'm going to add quite a bit of water. My first layer is going to just be kind of a few marks. By leaving the water pooled in these brush marks like I am, it's going to dry that way, which is going to give us a really nice effect in between everything else and as we add things. So I'm just going to leave that, let that dry a little bit. My aloe plant is going to go in the front. I want it to sit on top of everything. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this kind of blue color, mix it with lots of water. I've swished almost all of it out of my brush, dab it on there, add a little bit more water. And my brush is already the right shape for the leaves of the aloe plant, so it's really easy to just, making this one bigger, it's really easy to just let the brush do the work and let it be the shape of what you're laying down. I added a little bit more of that green in there, just like that. I'm not going to worry too much about the shape. I'm not going to worry too much about the edges or blending right now because that's going to lay down. It's going to dry quite quickly and quite light. And then my beautiful little desert rose. Red is so bossy. It's such a pain because you really have to water red down for it to do well. It'll just take over your whole page if you're not careful. So lots and lots of water. I'm dipping back into that water I have on the side, and I'm just going to lay down an outline of where I want to place that, leaving lots of white left over. Now my cactus, my main cactus is going to go behind, and I'm almost exclusively going to use yellow just to trace it out. Lots and lots of water again, and I'm just going to use this as a light tracer. So I'm going to go behind this aloe plant. I don't want to lose that leaf I just laid, so I'm just going to go like this. Nice and big. This one's going to be a little bigger than my last one. C'est la vie. I had a little guy there, one on the side, and then this little rabbit ear guy on the top with the two little things coming out of it. This one's a little bit fatter than my last one. I have a little bleeding from that rose outline and my aloe outline. Don't worry too much about those. And then we're going to add this little bulbous one. I'm actually going to make an executive call. So because I did my aloe plant bigger and I kind of like it, I'm just going to do this tall one so that I can balance out the plain, but I'm not going to do this guy. Or if I do, I'm going to do him really small, and I might do him in the front. So I'm going to start with this one, with this kind of bluish color again that I used for my aloe. Lots and lots of water. We're not using a ton of paint right now, and I'm just going to create a little cactus for myself. Rinsing it out with my water, I'm just going to pull the rest of that paint down, and that way he'll sit kind of behind everything else. This is definitely a different composition than the one I was working on yesterday. That's totally fine. It is not a big deal. Now I'm going to let everything that I just did kind of sit and dry so I can put my next layers on, but I am going to work on the sky. So for a really nice blend, you want to be kind of patient and you want to use lots of lighter layers, let them dry in between. So for my sky, I mixed this kind of orangey pink color, so that's literally what I'm going to do. A lot of watercolor palettes just have pink, so I'm going to take this pink color that I have already. I'm going to mix it with some orange to brighten it up because I want it to be kind of that Arizona sunset color, so it's not so pink, but I want it to be quite bright. Pretty, I like that. Maybe just a little bit more orange, yeah. Now this is a bit bright just to lay down. It's a little crayon boxy to me, and that's not really what we're going for painting something a little bit more natural. So I'm just going to add what's opposite on the color wheel, which is green. And almost this entire painting, and I just added just a little. See how it muddied it enough? We don't want our sky to be the most loud part of the entire painting. So by adding that green color, we're actually just helping it blend into the background a little bit more. I added a bit too much, but I added some more pink, and there we go, we're back. There, so now it's a little darker. That color is kind of more along the lines of what I'm thinking. Maybe just a touch more orange. There we go. So that's the color I'm looking for there. Lots of pigment. I'm going to swish my brush out, clean it off, bring lots of water in, and the first layer is going to be lots of water and just a little of that color. Because really we're just trying to lay the water down first for a more wet on wet effect. Now the reason we laid down, these kind of outlines first and did our sky second is because we want those colors to be bright and luminous. If we were to lay down the sky first and then try to put these green colors over top, they would go muddy, just like when we were mixing on the page there. And then instead of dabbing back that color, I'm just mixing in more water right on the page, and then I'm just going to bring it down. Because that's enough to do just about that whole section of page right there. And if some of this is still wet, just dance around it. Don't touch it if you can. Leave a little bit of a white halo. I know some of that pigment stayed where I put it, but we're going to do some more layers, so I'm not worried. See how there's quite a bit of pigment there? Rinse off my brush, blend it quickly, and bring it down. And I'm leaving quite a bit of white around these cactuses so far. Don't worry too much if there's some areas with more pigment than others. It doesn't need to be perfect. Find me a sky that's perfect, like it doesn't exist. Mother Nature is of course inherently perfect, but nothing in nature is perfect. Everything is actually imperfect, and that's what makes it amazing. Also, happy Earth Day. Okay, so I'm going to take some more of that pigment down, leaving that halo, rinse my brush. I've been using a rag lately too. These are just IKEA rags. I've almost completely gotten rid of paper towel in my studio. I really don't want to be using something that's as wasteful as paper towel if I can help it. With some things like acrylic, you kind of have to. But I've been using shop cloths and these IKEA rags for a little while, and I know which ones are my watercolor rags because they're covered in color, but I can almost exclusively use those for watercolor, and I think they work great. Again, I'm just kind of adding a bit of an outline. Now this color for the sky is going to be really similar to that flower that we laid down there. Don't worry about that too much. And I'm almost constantly rinsing and dabbing my brush off. Almost constantly. Back and forth and back and forth. Rinse, too much pigment, back. Don't like it, grab my cloth, take it back. It's really easy to remove watercolor if you think there's too much color in there. And I need to be careful because I can already feel my paper starting to rebel just a little bit. It's starting to get a little unhappy because I'm adding so much water, and then I'm causing all this friction with my brush in this wash. Which is also why you want to use really soft brushes for your washes. I'm just going to bring that color in quickly. There, I'm happy with that. Add a little more up here for darkness. And you know what? I'm actually not going to, because we're going to bring in another layer with our sky later. But if I let this dry, it'll behave a lot better than if I keep working away at it. Again, rinse, rinse, rinse. Always rinsing. I usually always have two receptacles of water. One that gets kind of muddy, one that's in the middle, and then a clean one. And clean is always for mixing, because if I want to go in and mix something now, if I mix with this muddy water, it's just going to look muddy. Okay, you can probably barely see where I laid down my first cactus, but that's where we're going to go next. So I'm going to add in a bit more of this sunshine color. You can see in this painting I put the sun kind of up here. So let's pretend that all of the light source is coming from that right side, that top corner. So everything on our top right side of our cactuses, flowers, aloe, etc. is going to be lighter. Everything on the left bottom side is going to be dark. So I'm going to grab some of this sunshine yellow color, and I'm just going to pull it in to the top parts. And now it's a little watered down from, you know, where I had it before. So I'm going to add just a bit more paint. There we go. Add a bit of a sunshine shape. And don't worry, you don't have to be too fancy about it. It doesn't have to blend perfectly because we're going to do more layers afterwards anyways. The hues don't have to match. You're just wanting to add a little bit of pigment to show where the sun is shining. Good. I'm going to go back to my aloe plant, add another layer of that bluey green color. Looks like I need to mix some more, so I'm going to bring in some of this blue. It's quite blue, the blue that I use. I like it, but it's like that's no good, right? With that, we're getting totally just blue. And blue is bossy too. The way red is bossy, blue is also very bossy. You can see I could rinse this brush out for ages and I still have blue on it. However, when you add a bit of teal and a bit of yellow, this is going to help to make it more of a green color. There we go. So now it's a deeper blue or green. Blue, more blue. And again, we're going to spend lots of time mixing and probably less time than you think painting. But that is just the reality. You can see how bossy that blue is. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to use it for my cactuses, actually. It's a little bit too much. This one's more in the range of what I'm looking for. Oh, I did it again. I grabbed that same bossy color. There we go. That's better. You want a teal and you want a blue color. You don't really want the same as what you have down here. We want something just a little bit different. Good. Again, with that aloe, bring it in. I'm just adding a little bit of a base to it. I don't know. I haven't looked at an aloe plant recently. I probably should. There we go. Good. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of dark along this side. So that blue teal color, that darker color, I'm going to bring it in here. And I'm not going to be too precious. See how I'm leaving quite a bit of white? That left side is the darkest. And I'm not blending this out. I'm going to blend it out in like 1 or 2 areas. At the top here, I'm thinking, and maybe at the bottom. But I don't want to blend out the whole thing, because otherwise I'm going to lose some of that cool, like luminous shading I have in between. And because I've already blended out this entire aloe plant, I think it'd be really distracting to have my cactus completely blended as well. I'm just going to add 1 more leaf. Good. I'm going to go into my rose again, and I am actually just going to use the same color I used for the sky, except for I'm going to add more pink and more orange, so it's got more pigment because it's closer to me, and you want the stuff in the forefront to do the talking. So I'm just going to add a few petals down. The darkest part of the flower is always going to be in the middle, in this section here where it goes down, so don't fill it in, leave lots of room. Swish, 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 cleaning my brush all the time. Now it's completely clean. I can use the tip of it to bring up that color instead of pulling in more color, because more color isn't gonna make these petals look more realistic. We want to have just water, and I'm pulling this up. Here's the technique I'm using for this. Cleaning my brush, cleaning it off so it's dry, pulling up just a bit of that paint, cleaning my brush, pulling up a bit of that paint, cleaning it, constantly, back and forth. There we go. That's a much better effect. And the way that's going to dry is going to be really pretty as well. Good. Going to move on to my cactus again, do another layer on that guy. I'm going to use kind of this mid, kind of limey green color, and I'm going to build up this middle section. So what'll probably end up being the dominant part of the cactus. And you don't have to fill it in. Again, it does not have to be blended perfectly. The bottom parts of these cactuses are going to be the darkest, so I am going to grab just a bit of this guy. Ooh! I mean, that's dark, but you know what? I'm going to play with it. Let's see if I can make it work. Because I don't actually mind that effect. Let's just pull that in. Good. Blending, swish, swish. Drying it off on my rag, and then pulling that color down. Actually, that's really nice. I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to actually try it again with just like a tiny bit of green on my, there we go. Just a little bit. And see how watercolor always wants to go where there's water, which seems inherent in the in its name, but again, swish, swish, cleaning my brush. Get in that habit if you can, early and often, and you'll thank yourself, because many a painting have I overworked by just not cleaning my brush properly. I'm going to do it up here as well. Anywhere in those little crevices, you know, where it's going to attach the cactus is really where you want to pull that dark color. Swish, swish, clean my brush, and then pull the color out. You can take a lot back too if you're not happy with how much color or how deep it is. Really easy once you've cleaned your brush to bring it back. Now, similar to when I was doing my sky, this cactus is getting a little unhappy with how much I'm working the paper, so I'm going to leave it, back it up. I'm going to go back into the foreground here and keep building that part up. And I'm going to add, which green? This one, because I've got lots of it. I'm going to water it down though, because I did add that blue and it went really, really quite green. But I'm going to do, rather than my big brush, I'm going to switch to my smaller brush here. Good. And just dot in some little kind of grass things. And I want to avoid too much near my cactuses just for now, because we're going to do some more layers. And if I have this new color on top, like for my flower example, for example, it's going to be really hard to get anything over top. I did put a little in front of my aloe. I am going to put a little in front of this cactus guy because I want him to go back a little further. So just adding that punch of color. And actually this guy's bleeding because it was still wet. So I'm just going to erase that. Pretend like it didn't happen. If you feel like this is too much of a linear plane and it's all kind of feels like it's in the same plane of sight, you can actually just take your cloth and dab back, making sure to use a new piece kind of every time. Dab back the ones that are in the back. Anything that is further away from you is naturally going to go back. Anything that's lighter is going to naturally want to go back. Anything that's darker is going to want to come forward. Similarly, anything that's cooler is going to go back. Anything that's warmer is going to come forward. That's just a general rule of thumb. It's not exclusive. There's many great and talented artists that have broken that rule very successfully, so don't quote me on it. But it's kind of a general rule of art, and it helps to create different fields of vision so that when you're looking at something, it does look like things are placed one in front of the other. And so now we're just building up layers. We're going to do a full circle again. So we're going to come back to our sky. It's had some nice time to dry. The paper's a little bit happier. You can see it's all laying flat, so no harm done. I've got my colors up here. Bring that pigment to start. Nice bright color at the top. Swish, swish, clean that brush, and then blend it. Lots of water. And you can see it's really easy to bring that color down. The more water I add, the easier it is to move and maneuver. And don't be afraid to move your piece as you go. You know, bring the angles and the areas to you where you need. Like I need this area of the piece towards me right now so I can get as close to this cactus without overlapping it as possible. So I want it to be close to me. And leave a bit of a halo. If there's a little bit of white, like a bit of a halo around your piece, don't worry about it. That's totally fine. In fact, that's preferable to getting too close and having it all bleed together. And that white is an area you'll never get back. You'll notice I have all of these colors of the rainbow in my palette, but the one that you can't really get back ever is white. So leave the white. Leave as much white as you can. And I put a lot of pigment there, so I'm just gonna take that back just a little bit. I'm gonna blend out this line because I don't want it to be there. And bring down some of that color. There we go. Now I've done this 3 times because I started a video for you guys and I got about halfway, and you know, it's one of those things that with technology you do your best, but sometimes it's just out to get you and there's really no way around it. So when I get it to a certain point, I'm going to kind of do this flip and reveal. It's like a perfect storm of accidents where I have basically a whole other piece created sitting in the standby. Oh, hi, Yasmin. Aw, I miss my Challenge by Choice group. There was a great art class at the YMCA downtown of young adults, and I miss painting with those guys a lot. It was like the highlight of every week. And obviously things are going to change in this COVID world that we're living in. And we're going to have to evolve and find ways to bring art to people in ways that we probably haven't thought of before. So it calls on us to be a little bit more innovative, which I think is all good. So yeah, I kind of don't mind that little darker hue. Again, I don't even mind that darker hue that's on this side. It doesn't have to be perfectly blended. This one I did have kind of a really light gradient, but I actually prefer this a little bit more, so whatever. Do one little push of color up here. Again, swish, swish, clean your brush. Anytime I say that, it probably means you need to do it too. And then I'm just going to use that water to bring that down. I like that dark color at the top. Good. Okay, leave that. The paper's getting a little angry, getting a little pilly again, so I'm just going to leave it. Aw, talk to you later, Yaz. Love you. Cool. So I'm going to go back into my main cactus again. This time I think I'm going to use a smaller brush, just I want some more kind of fine tuning. So I'm going to use this little guy. I lied. I'm going to use my bigger one. And I'm just going to grab a little bit more of my color. So I have that sunshiny yellow on the top. I've got kind of a lime green in the middle, and then that dark green that I'm starting to punch up from underneath. I'm going to go back in with my sunshiny lemon yellow to add that sunspot back in. I lost a bit of that yellow just over the drying period and the layers and the time that it took. So I'm just going to punch a bit of that back in there, and you can see that yellow really brightens up. I'm going to leave that because I don't want to blend it out too much. And I'm going to go back into my aloe vera with that greeny blue hue that I always have so much trouble mixing. And I'm going to lay some of that on top. Good. This little cactus guy now needs a bit more punching up, so I'm going to mix more of my blue. There we go. So I'm kind of using, if you are using tubes, or if you're buying tubes, this is a cerulean blue, and it's interesting when you're buying blues for watercolor palettes. Blue is the only color really, no, they say this, but like, there's a lot of colors you can't mix, but blues, you can't make blue be a different color of blue, if that makes sense. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm just going to paint on the back of this guy. So this teal color I'm mixing with makes this really nice aloe vera color, and this is a tealy blue that I'm working with. But if I were to use this one that I would normally use for a sky, I can't make that blue look like this blue. It's really, really hard. You could try, but it's really hard. And here's the bossy blue that I touched, and I went, oh, I wish I hadn't, because that one has so much more pigment. And again, I can't make that blue look like this blue. However, this blue that I grabbed makes a beautiful sky. You know, if I bring this down and turn it into a sky blue, it's wonderful. This one's great for those kind of like more illustrative or cactuses or different types of foliage. If you had some cooler foliage that was maybe sitting in the background and you wanted to have it kind of look a little more tree-like, you could have this be a blue that you use for a tree and then use this in the sky or the water, and you can already see how those two want to layer on each other. But I can't make this blue want to be like that blue, except for by adding a little bit of yellow. You could work this in with some yellow and it would kind of get to that point, and you could sort of achieve what I have here, but it's really difficult. So when you're buying tubes of watercolor, look for different colors of blue. Try not to buy the same hue of blue. For example, this one and this one, I didn't have to buy both. I could have just watered this one out and it's almost the same color. This just has more pigment in it. It's probably a more expensive tube. This was maybe a bit of a cheaper tube, but they're essentially the same color. These two blues are very, very different. Similarly, look at this one. This blue is that cerulean color. And it's kind of like a halfway. So it's like halfway between these two is this one. Again, for mixing though, you want to have something like this in your palette because it makes it easier to diversify the different colors that you're mixing. So blues are definitely one of the colors that I buy more of, strictly for that reason. When you're mixing them, you really can't achieve the same colors if you don't have the blues to start with. So that was my little aside on buying watercolor. Let's go back into the page. I'm going to use this darker color here. Again, I'm just sort of dancing it around this outside edge. I don't want to cover up too much. And I actually like this one to have some lines in it, because if you look at the cactus here too, it actually has some striations and stuff, and it almost looks like a pickle, but you know, we can work that out before the end. I'm blending in a few places. I'm blending on this right side where potentially the light will be hitting from that end. And I'm just blending out the bottom, just a bit, and the top. But I don't want to lose some of that white. I don't want to lose some of those layers that I've placed. You can see in the aloe I've lost some of those layers already, so I'm going to leave them in that one. And I've left a few on my cactus as well. Now I've been neglecting my little desert rose, so I'm going to go back in, and I'm pretty much using the same color actually that I used for the sky on this rose, but it's got a lot more pigment, right? Flowers are so hard. I've read so many books on how to paint watercolor flowers. I've watched so many tutorials, and I'm still pretty bad at it. But you know what? That's not going to stop me from painting it. And I like the way they look, and so I keep playing, and I keep learning, and I keep blending. Swish, swish, clean that brush, and away we go. We're back into the piece. Okay, I'm going to add a little more pigment on my aloe and build up that last layer, I think. Now, I'm going to add a little bit more into the foreground here. Now, we haven't used a lot of other colors in this so far. I kind of want to play with some purple, is what I was thinking. I didn't do it with this one, but I was thinking about it afterwards, and I really wanted to have like a plummy purple color. So I'm going to add some purple in this front part. And just add in some of these grass pieces, but in like a dark kind of purple. And I think that the purple will add some layers in as well. You can see I had something on my brush for a little while. There. Now we're getting it. Good. And this is adding a bit of dimension again. I don't want to lose too much of this area beside my flowers, but I'm going to start to bring it in a little. There. Again, if you want it to look a little bit more like it's moving back, just dab back some of the color of the ones that are closest to your cactuses and leave the darker parts in the front. And that'll give you a bit of a dimensionality. Good. Okay. So now I'm going to do the bait and switch because I worked really hard on my other one and it's a little different than this one, but the main difference is that it's dry. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I want to show you some of the ink work I did at the end. So there's my little bait and switch. And I have a couple of micron pens here. This is dry. I might do another layer on the sky because I prefer the sky on the one that I just did. But basically I wanted to show you some of the effects that I got with the ink afterwards. So I'm taking one of my fine micron pens. That one's a 0.005. That's pretty fine. I think I'm going to do a 0.01 micron, except for I can't find it, so that's fine. We'll do this one. Pretty tiny, but we'll get the same effect. No, it's too tiny. I changed my mind. Here, 0.25. That's better. So now I'm going to go in and do my little cactus spots with pen. Now, the bait and switch was also your time to take a break. You know, leave it, let it sit for a little bit, and then come back to it after. And I'm just doing little dots all over my little cactus guy. Little prickles. And I'm going to do a little outline on this one and just bring down some little striations. I don't want to outline the whole thing. You could if you wanted to. If you want to go a little heavier with your ink and you want to outline the whole piece, you totally could. I like to do just a few subtle lines to sort of illustrate where things are coming from and where they're going, or if it's confusing in an area or something like that, then you could add a little bit. Also, there's shadow down here, so I'm going to add just some quick cross hatching just to create some depth there. My aloe doesn't need a lot. I'm going to leave it. This little dome guy, I'm just going to give a bit of a suggestion, and then I'm going to create my lines. And again, little trickles. And then this one is going to have a little more because it has lines. And again, anywhere where there's sort of more darkness or patterning, you could add a little bit of cross hatching, some extra dots, wouldn't go astray. Just adding some little dots down there. Good. Now, of course, we have our roses down here. Flowers are hard, but you can kind of try to get back some of the petal work. Definitely with ink, it's easier. Watercolor is so hard. I just struggle. I really want to be good at drawing flowers, or painting flowers rather, in watercolor, and I just can't seem to get there yet. But when I figure it out, I will let you guys know. Good. So I'm going to leave that. I'm really happy with this ink work, actually. I used watercolor over here and I found it to be a little bit heavy. So now I'm going to go back in with my brush and I'm going to put in my sun. And I started with kind of like an orange color to start. And don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't even mind little kind of feathering and striations on the outside of the sun. You could add a bit more yellow and put it on that left side of the sun, and then have a darker red or even orange on the right side. Give it a bit of dimensionality if you'd like. If you want to make your sun red, you can. If you want to make your sun a moon, you can. It doesn't matter to me. It's your creation, so. But we did have a bit of light coming from it, so moonlight would work too, mind you. Good. So that's looking pretty good. These flowers need a little more love. They're a little dull now that they've dried. So I'm just going to add some color. The best part about using a micron or Copic pen, these are my favorite to use. This is Copic, and this is micron. Is they're permanent, so you can paint over them afterwards. Unlike some felt tip markers and non-toxic markers, you can't go over it afterwards. These ones you can. And then the only place we're going to use kind of that true pink color, that really punchy, bright pink, is in the flowers that are going at the top. And for those, again, I'm just using my brush. My brush is the shape of a flower petal or a leaf, so I really don't need to do much. I'm just laying those down, swish, swish, like that. And again, I'm turning my page to get the angles that I need. I'm not making my hand go to my page. I'm making my page come to me, just like that. I'm gonna make the one on the little bulbous guy just a bit bigger and a bit more punchy. And there we go. I'm actually feeling really happy about that. The only area that I think I might add a little bit more layering in is in the bottom here, and I have my purple micron pen. I'm just going to go in and do these little dashes. And this just adds some interest to an area that is kind of otherwise usually forgotten. So I'm just adding some little hatching marks in between my leaves. And again, that's just adding some depth. You could add more watercolor if you wanted to. I'm kind of feeling like there's enough watercolor in here. So I'm going to do these little striations because I think they're kind of cute. They're just little tick marks. I go one way, then they go the other way. 3 one way, 3 the other way. And I kind of just alternate. And it kind of makes it look like a little desert thicket. And the biggest takeaway, I think, from this particular project is we have a lot of green in this, which is also why I chose the pink for the background, because, you know, traditionally red and green are opposite on the color wheel, which means they're contrasting colors. However, they also make each other sing. They really do help each other out and make those colors a little bit more vibrant and buoyant. So by using colors that are opposite on the color wheel, you're giving a lot of contrast and push and pull to the piece and letting it kind of do its own dance, which I think is kind of cool. I'm going to layer just a couple more in front. Now that I'm done these guys, you know, I can put some grass that's like creeping up on it to create a bit of depth there too. You know, even these roses could have kind of some little leaves coming off of them. Got a little carried away. And then I'm going to use up a little bit of this kind of lime greeny yellow color. Again, anything warmer is going to want to come towards us. Anything cooler is want to go away. So I'm going to add more yellow in my front, more green in the back. And then maybe a little darker just over top of that part. Ugh, I don't like that. Take it back. That's your eraser if you ever need it. Good. So now I have 3 desert paintings. The one I did yesterday, the one I did earlier today, and the one that I was working on at the beginning of this. So I tried to keep it oh yeah, so this, oh yeah, it isn't a board. So this, I actually just popped the plexiglass out of IKEA frames. I just had a question from someone, and I've had this question before. This is actually just like a plexiglass, and I really enjoy it for painting on because it's clear. It doesn't interrupt my color mixing, but I popped the plexiglass out of IKEA frames because I hate it. I think it's really cheap looking. And then I actually find frames at garage sales and steal the glass from them and put them in the IKEA frame so they look more professional. And then I use the plexiglass for painting on, which is awesome. It's really nice and sturdy. I can use them over and over again, and I've got lots of them now for classes, which is awesome too. So yeah, hopefully that helps. But I hope you enjoyed my little desert tutorial. I hope I didn't go too quickly. If I did in any spots, of course you can pause it, take a break, come back. Oh, thanks, Suzanne. And take a break and come back. I take lots of breaks and grab tea and you know, those kinds of things so I don't overwork my page too much. But already I feel like I learned a lot from the one I did yesterday compared to the one I did today. So I was a little bit more patient, and I didn't blend as much, so I feel like I got a little bit more depth. So I hope that was enjoyable for everybody, and we'll see you next week. We're going to switch gears and move into acrylic painting, so get your acrylic paints ready, and I'll see you next week.